The following program contains discussions of health conditions that may be distressing to some listeners. Views expressed are those of the featured individuals and do not represent of the host. This program is not intended to defame or disparage any individual, entity, caste, community, race, religion, institution, or person. Listener discretion is advised. Please note that this program does not provide professional medical advice. Consult a healthcare professional for personalized guidance. What exactly is a pap smear? You said that women who are sexually active should be getting one done.
Nowadays, because we are starting our sexual life a little earlier, so I think it's imperative that we tell them that there's a test that you need to do regularly.
Do you also feel the same? Like women are aware, they're going through perimenopause, or if they're going through menopause, they are aware of the symptoms.
In the earlier times, they used to be told, oh, this is something that all women go through. We need to talk about it. We need to know that it is just not any phase. Many women feel that they have lost their sexuality when they go into menopause.
How difficult is it if you're overweight and you want to get pregnant?
Our body fat is very closely related to our ovaries. The resistance of the ovaries too, they do not ovulate well.
A lot of women, older women, like my mom's age, they complain of being tired all the time. यहाँ पे दर्द हो रहा है, वहाँ पे दर्द हो रहा है. What do you tell them?
You have lived that long, so there are internal changes which you cannot see. The bone aches that they get, the weakness of their muscles. Calcium supplementation in their 40s is very essential.
There was also this debate that the emergency contraceptive pill was being misused. Is that true? And are there any dangers of it?
Of course, you're increasing your risk of having pregnancies outside the uterus.
Hi, and welcome to yet another episode of the Lifesaver Show. Firstly, thank you so much for showing us so much love on YouTube and all the other podcast platforms. I am overwhelmed, and I'm so glad that so many of you resonate with all our health issues that we cover in the different podcasts. Joining me today is a very well-known obstetrician and gynecologist in Mumbai. Her name is Dr. Devika Chopra. She's attached to Bhartiya, Wockhardt, and Elizabeth hospitals, and she's very passionate about women's health, especially menopausal and adolescent health. Let's listen into what she has to say. Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Lifesaver Show. Today, Dr. Devika Chopra joins me from Mumbai. Welcome, Devika. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Neha. How are you?
Very well, thank you. A few days ago, when I had a chat with you on the phone, you were quite concerned about specific health issues that women seem to face. And because you're a gynecologist, I'm guessing that you get a lot of these patients, a lot of these questions. So what are the top questions or concerns that women come to you with?
So, of course, being a gynecologist, period problems is the number one issue that I am faced with. And nowadays, there's a rise in menopausal complaints. Patients who are transitioning from their menstrual cycle to menopause, they are finding it difficult in moving that transition. And also young adults who are wanting to, experience their sexuality. So they also come to doctors wanting to be safe, wanting to be vaccinated, and have their regular health checkups. So I think these three are the top most concerns that, patients come to me.
Do you educate them about getting pap smears? Do you educate the women about getting pap smears?
In fact, it's the first time sometimes they have heard about a pap smear when they come to my clinic. I have to actually show them the uterus, the diagram, that this is the cervix, and I collect fluid from here. I send it to testing. And then as soon as they hear cancer, oh, it's a cancer checkup, then why are we doing it? So I said, but it's a screening test. Everyone gets to do it. So they don't actually, because of, lack of education or lack of sex ed, or I don't know what it is. Many women don't know that pap smears should be done after the age of 21. If you're sexually active, you should get them regularly done.
Tell us more, Dr. Chopra, about what exactly is a pap smear. You said that women who are sexually active should be getting one done. What is the frequency of getting a pap smear done, and why is it so imperative that women should be getting it done?
So why we include the sexually active part of it? Because there is an infection called the HPV infection, the human papillomavirus infection. There's a vaccine against it nowadays also, which I will be talking about later.
Okay.
But because women who are sexually active are exposed to HPV. HPV is a causative agent in many cancers, that is
Okay.
cervical cancer, throat cancer, and in men with respect to the penile cancer and anal cancer. So basically, what we check with pap smears is whether there's a change in the mouth of your uterus, change in the cells of the mouth of the uterus, which can be picked up by these pap smears. And so we can diagnose cervical cancer at an early stage when we are taking pap smear.
Okay.
In India, we have at least 1 in 5 women who can have certain cervical changes and certain tests that come positive that show abnormal cells of their cervix, and they require treatment of the same. So nowadays, because we are starting our sexual life a little earlier, children or adolescents are entering into the sexual phase of their life earlier. So I think it's imperative that we tell them that there's a test that you need to do regularly. So I recommend my patients to do it like once every alternate year. And if your tests are normal, once every 3 years. But if there
Okay.
is a change or we detect that there's a HPV virus, nowadays we can even detect whether you're infected with HPV. It's called the
Okay.
HPV DNA test. And it
Okay.
can be done along with your pap smear. So if that turns out to be positive, then sometimes in certain cases, we need to test further and probably get that portion removed out of the mouth of the uterus.
Okay. Very interesting. I think it should be in the number one preventive health checkups for women going forward, right? Am I right?
Yes, and I'm totally for this because it's preventable.
Yeah.
And it just involves, of course, many online forums. I have patients who come to me that, oh, I read about it online and it's very useful. It's not. It's a little uncomfortable, but even may not be a symptom. It's uncomfortable.
How do you exactly do a pap smear test?
So it's like a pelvic sonography. All right,
Okay.
you have to expose your pelvic region. We take a speculum, a small metal instrument from which we can observe the mouth of the uterus.
Okay.
And there's a brush with which we scrape the cells, the mouth of the uterus, and then send it for test.
Okay.
So done proficiently and by an experienced person, it takes less than even like 30 seconds. It is in and out. But sometimes because patients are so fearful, they close up their thighs, they lift up their buttocks. So that's what causes a little bit more discomfort because we cannot see the area that we want to test.
True. Okay. Dr. Chopra, let's talk about perimenopause and menopause. I do believe that now, as when I talk to my friends as well, there is a lot more people are willing to discuss, women are willing to discuss, and they're a lot more aware of perimenopausal symptoms. So when they come to you, do you also feel the same? Like women are aware?
They are. Actually, in the earlier times, they used to be told, oh, this is something that all women go through. Like, come on, you're just making too much out of this. Everyone goes through this.
Yeah.
But I think now menopause, women are spending such a chunk of their life after the age of 45, 50 because of increased life expectancy. I think we need to talk about it. We need to know that it is just not any phase. Like how there are teenage temper tantrums, it's because it's a transition in the early part of your life.
Yeah.
The terrible teens. Everyone calls this the terrible teens. Every time I hear, especially some people like, oh, he's just menopausal. Or, oh, she's just PMSing. That's not a way to shrug it off because it's an important transition from your womanhood, from feeling like you're, sexual. Many women feel that they have lost their sexuality when they go into menopause. There's depression, there's an increased risk of heart attack, there's osteoporosis, there's dryness, there's loss of elasticity of your skin, there's muscle loss. There's so many changes that take place that the women have to go through. And I think as a doctor, I'm so happy that so many of my patients come forward and they are telling me, the doctor, I am getting these hot flashes, or I'm feeling weak, or I'm getting depressed, I'm having mood swings. And then we can help them transition. There are many groups that are there to help women transition through. There are now many phytoestrogens, many tablets that you can use to help you transition.
Okay, that's interesting to know. So symptoms-wise, perimenopause and menopausal symptoms, are they similar or are they different in any way?
They overlap.
They overlap?
So some women don't experience anything. Those women
Okay.
Yeah, and some women actually, even before their periods are starting to go, they start having the insomnia, the mood swings, they start having hot flashes, they start feeling bloated. The first sign most women come with is that I'm gaining weight around my tummy.
Yeah.
And that most Indian women has that problem. But I'm saying that most of us start that because our core starts getting weak. After the age of 35, 40, our muscles start becoming weak. Everything starts becoming, the collagen is lost. So, in menopause, the estrogen that we have in our body that makes us feminine, that gives us our periods, is what falls down. So that's what causes all these changes.
Okay. Okay. Now, are there any sort of medicines or supplements that we can use to tide over these symptoms, or to, just get on with it? Like a lot of them, a lot of women, it's very debilitating for them to go through these symptoms on an everyday basis. So, are there any supplements that women can use?
So obviously, the first thing, that if it is very severe and very difficult and it's actually causing a decrease in the quality of life of the patient,
Mhm.
start the patient on HRT, that is hormone replacement therapy.
Okay,
And
and that's safe.
yes, there used to be a lot of myths that sometimes it can cause breast cancer, endometrial
Yeah.
but nowadays, there are very safe versions, gels that are available that can
Mhm.
be patches that are available in countries like the UK that help
Okay.
women transition this phase more.
Okay.
Also, now there are phytoestrogens, that is plant-derived estrogens, which are
Mhm.
relatively safe and very highly acceptable by the patients. Soya products,
Mhm.
isoflavonoids, all these products that have a little bit estrogen content is very helpful for these patients.
Dr. Chopra, does it actually become harder to lose weight post 40, or is that just a myth?
No, it does. It is difficult because your metabolic rate falls. So I've asked this to many of my friends who are nutritionists, and they just explain that your metabolism falls after your 35, 40. It has to do
Okay.
something with your estrogen as well as your thyroid gland. So
Okay.
all my patients who hit 40, 45, I tell them, get your thyroid tested, because thyroid gland.
I was actually just going to ask you that question. What role does thyroid play in when you're post 40 and you're finding it difficult to lose weight?
No, thyroid is important, not even post 40. If a patient has symptoms that intolerance to heat or cold, just feeling sluggish all the time, having thick, clammy skin, it
Mhm.
shows that there's a metabolic problem, some kind of metabolic problem. And most probably in the Indian subpopulation, we see that hypothyroidism is very common.
Okay.
So, and especially after the age of 45, I have seen
Mhm.
that the definite link. There are many studies also say that after 45, once the estrogen starts falling, many
Mhm.
patients become hypothyroid.
Okay.
So that is one important test. And thyroid plays an important. It's the hormone that makes you wake up. So that's why whenever you're taking the thyroid pill, you're taking it early in the morning. It's because
Okay.
it's a pill that gives you that boost. It's
Okay.
required. So
Okay.
imagine if that hormone is not there, you will gain weight,
Mhm.
you will feel sluggish, you'll have hair loss, you'll have skin changes.
Okay. Now, talking about weight issues in women, how difficult is it if you want to get pregnant? How difficult is it if you're overweight and you want to get pregnant?
So basically, BMI, that is what we calculate of the women. We classify women as, overweight and obese based on your BMI, that is based, body mass index. So yes, women who are overweight, who are also in the obese category of, having a high BMI,
Mhm.
they find it a little more difficult to conceive because their ovulation.
Okay.
So our body fat is very closely related to our ovaries. Okay. So and many people have seen that there is a resistance of the ovaries too. They do not ovulate well. Okay.
Okay.
If you are on the higher BMI side.
Okay.
So in fact, many studies have said that even if you lose 5% of your body
Mhm.
weight, you start ovulating. You understand? So
Uh-huh.
I explain that to few of my patients. That doesn't mean that I want you to become thin or size 0. I just want you to start exercising so that your muscle mass increases, body fat
Okay.
decreases,
Okay.
and you start ovulating.
Okay.
This is something that patients need to understand. It is not that we want everyone to become thin, or because I see many people feel that doctors fat shame. It's not that. There are scientific studies that show that ovulation is related to your body.
The other thing I want to ask you is, because you're talking about muscle mass and you're talking about weight issues with women, how important is the intake of protein in women? Because I feel it is very, very, very important. But I want you to, as a doctor, elaborate on it.
So, Indian diets are deficient in protein, especially if you're vegetarian. All right. Also, there's a certain amount of malabsorption that takes place in our body with respect to protein.
Okay.
You are supposed to have 1 gram per kilogram of protein
Okay.
or body weight. So now, suppose if I'm 55 kilos, I'm supposed to have 55 grams of protein a day. Which
Okay.
me being a vegetarian, I don't think I'm consuming with my diet alone.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
do need that protein powder daily
Mhm.
with my collagen powder now that I'm above 40. I need
Okay.
that supplement. And plus,
Okay.
especially since I work out. So if you're doing any kind of working out, muscle training, your muscles are losing that amount of protein. And unless you want to not lose your fat, lose your muscle mass, you will skip the protein.
Mhm.
Protein is important in every phase of our life, whether we are growing up as children, whether we are adolescent, whether we want to get pregnant, or even in our menopausal status. But more importantly, after 40, it's very important.
There's one thing that I want to clarify with you. This is something that I do. I cycle my workouts to my periods. So I think you do the same because I read somewhere that you do the exact same thing. And I think more women, if they're into working out, if they're into exercising, they should be doing the same thing. Like, during my ovulation phase is when I give it my best and I'm just lifting heavy and I'm going crazy in the gym. And in my luteal phase, I normally do the zone 2 training and it comes down a little bit. Even though I give it my best, but my body is not, my mind is willing and वो बोलते हैं ना, mind is willing, but my body is not willing. So give us a lowdown on, because this is something which I feel that women should be more aware of, especially when they're training, because कभी-कभी हमें क्या होता है, हम जिम चले जाते हैं, आज एनर्जी नहीं है, आज इतना लो फीलिंग है, आज ये, आज वो है. If we simply figure out where we are in terms of our period, where exactly we stand in that month, I think it's easier. That brain fog then doesn't occur as to अब क्या करना है जिम जाके, हमारे में एनर्जी क्यों नहीं है. So please, I want you to tell me exactly what happens in that whole thing.
I will explain it to you scientifically. Okay, why our body feels a particular. In the first half of the cycle, everything in a woman's body is preparing herself to get pregnant. I know
Okay.
it's very primal. It sounds very non-feministic, but I feel that
Yeah.
is our bodies are built that way. The
Okay.
first half of our cycle before ovulation is estrogen based. Okay,
Mhm.
with high amount of estrogen. So you have good amount of energy. You're not tired. Of course, this is after your period. All right. And around ovulation, of course, you want to get pregnant. So you're very energetic. And classically, if you are looking at the primal instinct, you want to get pregnant, you're full of energy, full of that energy. So that's why cardio. After ovulation, the body is preparing itself to get pregnant.
Mhm.
So the muscles in your body are becoming more pliable, more loose because it has to fit the growing uterus. So
Okay.
you start feeling more tired and you don't want to actually work out as much and your body feels a little bit more flexible. So
Okay.
that is the time that you do yoga, Pilates, or a little bit more easier exercise.
Mhm.
I also tell my patients that even though you're in your periods, doesn't mean, of course, that you have to skip working out. You can take a rest, not work out that vigorously. But during periods, also you can have a light exercise. It
True.
won't reduce period pain. It elevates your mood, removes those period blues,
Yeah.
and really, really helps with respect to your overall mental state during periods. So I work out.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. Can I tell you that when I was pregnant, I worked out till at least my 8th month of pregnancy, and I was running. I was I was weight training. In fact, I did a 5 kilometer marathon where I ran and walked, but I did all of that. I was swimming. So I was very active. And, yeah, हमारे country में actually बहुत एक, there is a myth that when you're pregnant, तो बस बैठ जाओ, मतलब कुछ करो मत. By doctor's orders, you have to take bed rest and your pregnancy is such that, it involves a bed rest. But are you one of those who tells their patients to sort of exercise and work out during their pregnancy?
So it all depends again. So if it's a very difficult pregnancy, so most of my patients are infertility cases. So they have found it difficult to conceive. So it's a little
Okay.
bit more precious pregnancy.
Okay.
The first 3 months, I tell them to take it a little easier, but not to skip exercise. I do tell them do go for at least a daily walk.
Yes.
At
Yes,
least
that's
you
very
can-
important.
Like I tell them,
Yeah.
okay, if you don't want to do a brisk walk, go with your husband in the evening, have a romantic walk, go for half an hour,
Yeah.
because it will give you a breather. You'll not
Yeah.
be cooped up at home. And it is a form of exercise. Later in the second trimester, yes, I do advise them. They can do their prenatal yoga. They can do their, weights also. I am not so much for weights during pregnancy. Those, heavy weightlifting.
True.
Running, no problem. I don't see a problem with walking. I don't see a problem with yoga, Pilates.
Isn't it like better when you are working out during your pregnancy? Your body seems to bounce back as well faster post pregnancy.
Milk production also starts faster. Some
Yeah.
studies have shown that. There is
Yeah.
a greater rate of postpartum depression which is a very, very neglected topic,
Mhm.
depression. And
True.
also you feel much more positive. Many women face that body dysmorphia after the pregnancy. Their body is changed completely. I think if you're working out consistently, that regular dopamine, serotonin that is released when you're exercising.
Yeah. Now, Dr. Chopra, there are a lot of apps these days available on, on the phone to track your ovulation, to track your periods, to track your cycle. Can they be used? Firstly, I want you to tell me the efficacy of these apps. Are they very reliable when it comes to predicting your ovulation date or safe sex or wanting to get pregnant? How reliable are they when it comes to, just sort of using them?
So I feel it is around 60 to 70% accurate. Okay.
Okay.
Because ovulation takes place anytime in the body. It can take place even when you're breastfeeding sometimes. The period will come 14 to 15 days after you ovulate. That is definite.
Mhm.
That is a definite period. Okay.
Yeah.
But ovulation is spurious. It can occur sometimes early. It's
Okay.
like, you're working out well. Some patients have periods of 21 days. Periods come in
Mhm.
21 days. So they are ovulating close to their 7th or 8th day. Whereas
Mhm.
some patients get their periods in 35 days. So they
Mhm.
are ovulating close to the 20th day. So
Mhm.
ovulation cannot be tracked as well. But I feel you can go to your gynac. She will,
Okay.
she will tell you, because we have a kind of a formula where the maximum number of days of your cycle and the minimum number of days, and then we tell you the fertile period, you know. And
Okay.
so, but I just feel that, to avoid sex in those times, sometimes I've seen patients have avoided it, but because there's a spurious ovulation in the other ovary, they've gotten pregnant. So
Okay.
can't,
Okay.
you have two ovaries. So anything, you can have multiple ovulation.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, now I want you to tell me what are the challenges that these days women face when it comes to their reproductive and sexual health. That thing of biological clock is ticking. I mean, how true is it? And what are the normal concerns or maybe the other concerns that women come to you with?
So basically, with respect to biological clock ticking, yes, we are all become more career oriented. We are studying more. We are
Um,
more to our offices, and that's really good. I myself am that way,
mhm.
and they are worried that when, like, should we plan our pregnancy sooner? How much time do I have? Because
Yeah,
everyone wants to be economically, more balanced,
yeah.
and before having or starting a family. And so there are few tests which I give, of course, the patients to do to see what is their egg reserve. That is called AMH, that is anti-Mullerian hormone. And of course, we tell them, okay, you can wait probably 6 months to a year. This is
Mhm.
patients who want to conceive. But women who are not married, who don't want to conceive sooner, or they are not even having a partner on the horizon, and they don't want to be forced into getting married. There's a very good option called egg freezing.
Egg freezing.
Yeah. So it's
Okay.
basically like an IVF procedure. We give you
Mhm.
injections, make multiple eggs inside your ovaries, and then pick it up with the help of a sonography, and we store it. It's like a fixed
Okay.
deposit. You
Okay.
keep it, and you encash it when you're ready. I myself did it when I was 33.
Okay.
So it can be stored lifelong. But of course, after you're 40, you would require IVF. If you wanted to reuse those eggs, you would
Mhm.
require for IVF only to occur to get pregnant.
Now I want to ask you. I'm on mothers raising daughters. I have a daughter myself, and the some of the concerns that come because you are also specialize in adolescent care is when they reach puberty, and a lot of girls go through PCOS and PCOD. Are there any ways to not make your child go through this, or is it imperative that all girls will go through it? I mean, I have a child who's 10, and I am extremely careful about her diet and extremely careful about her not only nutrition but also her exercise and all of that. Or at the same time, I see a lot of other mothers who aren't, and they are not very knowledgeable on what to give their kids as they're entering puberty. So, give me the lowdown on PCOS and PCOD. What exactly is it, and how does it occur?
So PCOS, PCOD, same thing. It's a metabolic syndrome now that we are getting.
Okay.
And there is a minor genetic component to it. Some
Okay.
studies say that PCOS, PCOD, the likelihood of a girl child getting it is determined how healthy the mother was during her pregnancy.
Okay.
Yeah. So it is programming of the cells of the girl child while the child is still in the womb. So
Okay.
how healthy
Okay.
the mother
Interesting.
was during her pregnancy. Okay. So I mean, imagine, so many years before, you can like influence the outcome of your child.
Okay.
Secondly, I don't believe everything is genetics. Like you can prevent the occurrence of certain diseases if your lifestyle is good. So I'm a big person who talks about lifestyle changes that are necessary to delay the onset of certain illnesses. So a lifestyle like what you're doing is right. Being careful about what she eats, not too much junk food, not too much fried pizza, pasta, burger. In fact, I just give them a whole list and tell them whatever you like to eat now, you have to avoid that.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay. Making it very simple. Just take everything off the menu.
Pizza, pasta, burgers,
Okay.
over here,
Ah.
bhel puri, sev puri.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
fruits, vegetables, good protein, and of course, exercise. In today's stressful world, children are not finding the time with their studies and the highly competitive fields that they are in.
Yeah.
But I feel just 45-minute break for them to go for a walk where they are off the phone, off the digital time that they get.
Yeah.
Just go out there and exercise is so
Okay.
important because
Okay.
PCOD is a lifestyle disorder. You need to change your lifestyle. So before I start medication on any patient, I always first tell them change your lifestyle.
Yeah.
Then I will give you 6 months. So my medication, what it will do,
Yeah.
when you're taking the medicine, you'll get your periods. Everything will be
So
fine.
it's basically like treating the symptoms, but you're not treating the, the cause.
Exactly.
Okay.
So the cause has to change.
Now, for women who are, let's say, my mom's age, crossed menopause and whatever, do they need any supplementation? Do they need any changes in their nutrition or going forward? Because a lot of women, older women, like my mom's age, they complain of, being tired all the time. Is yahan pe dard ho raha hai, wahan pe dard ho raha hai. How do you explain it to them? Like, what do you tell them?
My nanny, my mom, all of them are, of course, the same age. So I try and show them that you, of course, don't look the same, right? You're seeing your skin when you were in your teens or in your 20s, and now the skin has wrinkles in it. The same way, each and every cell of your body has undergone that many years of change. And so you are lived that long. So there is internal changes which you cannot see. All right? So calcium, the bone aches that they get, the weakness of their muscles, calcium supplementation in their 40s is very essential. So of course, many patients tell me, but doctor, I have kidney stones, or don't I get kidney stones? So, I mean, there are certain compounds which are safe to take. Okay. Like lessen the formation of stones.
Okay.
And I give them a simple formula, take it for 3 months, stop for 3 months,
Okay.
And when
Okay.
you're truly menopausal, you need daily calcium supplementation.
Oh,
Right?
okay.
Yes, you need to have. I mean, I was surprised. My mom recently was a patient of breast cancer. And so she, because of her therapy, now she needs so much amount of calcium because you're losing the amount of estrogen in your body faster because you have estrogen dependent cancer. And she requires 2000 milligrams of, calcium per day.
Okay.
It's a high dose. So then I realized that most of us require it and we're not taking calcium, magnesium, zinc, selenium, all the antioxidants. So basically, if you are healthy otherwise, a simple calcium supplementation and a multivitamin you should be taking.
Okay. 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 I'm going to give these tips to my mom also. I think she should be listening to this and, taking tips.
Yeah.
I just feel that as times are changing, women conversing with their doctors, like what I feel is that they're more comfortable now talking about their sexual history and the partners that they've been with without the fear of judgment, as opposed to when we used to go to gynecologists when we were younger and there was this taboo attached to it that, it was all behind closed doors. But I think women and also girls in their adolescent years and their teens, slightly above their teens, do you think that the time is changing and the tides are changing now?
Yes, I think, but not all doctors are non-judgmental. I would like to say that, but most of us are.
Yeah.
And then I think we have to realize that we are here to treat the patient and give them the best options so that they can take care of their health. Judgment is not a part of our profession.
Yeah.
And I mean, patients are coming to us, and I feel really privileged that some of them just come and they want to sit in front of me and talk to me. Okay, I'm just come here to talk to you, doctor. I have nothing wrong with me. I just want to feel nice and just talk to you. And I feel as doctors, we should have the skill of listening.
Yeah.
Listening is the most important skill a doctor can have. That half of the patient's troubles go when they feel that someone is hearing them, especially women need
Yeah.
to be heard.
Yeah.
Well, I really believe that. So I think,
But it's fabulous when I think your patients can feel that comfortable with you that they can actually just sit and have a chat with you, you know?
yes, about anything.
Yeah.
And I have a couple of them who do that, and I feel so privileged. And they're like, it's not that we don't have friends. It's just that we feel that you're sitting here non-judgmental. You'll give me, okay, take care of this, take care of that, and you'll talk
Yeah.
about my mental health also.
Yeah.
How I should deal with things at home also. So these things, is something which goes beyond the gynecology field, but it comes with basically being holistic doctor, giving the entire, even the mental health needs a little bit of look. Like as soon as a patient walks in, we see how they are dressed, we see their eyes, we see whether they are smiling, how they take care of themselves. And the first thing I ask, how are you? How is everyone at home? Especially the new
Mhm.
mothers. They are so tired. And everyone feels that, nahi, nahi, ye to humne bhi kiya tha. But they go through so much depression, so much change.
Yeah.
So I think that first appointment which I have, I only say कि नहीं आप प्लीज ना अपने husband को लेके आना at the most या बच्चे को घर पे छोड़ के आना and give half an hour to me. I want to talk to you. I want to ask you because for me it's very important. Tell her कि do this to take care of yourself. Take care of yourself, then you can take care of it. So these are the things that as a doctor it's important.
Now, when it comes to contraception, let's talk contraception. I want to know what are the options that women have. They are in charge now of their fertility. They're in charge of who they're partnering with, and they are also in charge of using contraceptives. So, what are the different contraceptives available in the market for women now, and how effective are they?
So the first kind is of course a barrier contraceptive, so which is
Okay.
the condom. There are female and male condoms
Okay,
which are
and they're available here, the female condoms.
yeah,
Okay.
they are available. Not very, very well popularized, but they are.
Okay.
And then, of course, there are intrauterine devices, that is our properties, okay, which are different generations that are available. Now, there's a hormonal property also that is available, which helps prevent excessive blood loss.
Okay.
Some patients who are, just in their transition of perimenopause, they experience a lot of blood loss. So we have a property, or we have a IUD, intrauterine device, which treats a hormone, which prevents them from having the blood loss. And lastly, of course, there is the contraceptive pills. There are different generations of this pills, and the pill is suited to the patient's requirements. So if the patient is having heavy periods, there are certain amounts. If the patient has PCOD, there is another contraceptive. Or if the patient is thin, then there's another contraceptive. So there are different types catering to different kinds of patients. And of
Dr. Chopra, there was a while ago, there was also this debate that the emergency contraceptive pill was being misused. Is that true? And are there any dangers of it of on your health if you misuse and abuse that emergency contraceptive pill?
I have people who are taking the emergency pill like a regular pill, like having it three
Okay.
times in a month.
Okay.
The emergency pill is, as its name suggests, is an emergency pill. It has to be taken within 72 hours of sexual contact, unprotected sexual contacts. And of course, it works by preventing ovulation, delaying the sperm from meeting the egg, causing premature bleeding. But sometimes it doesn't work. It works only up to 9, like it has a failure rate of 3 to 4%.
Okay.
And so you can still get pregnant if you've taken, the emergency contraceptive. And you're increasing your risk of having pregnancies outside the uterus, that is ectopic pregnancy. So
Okay.
it does cause a risk on your health. It delays your periods. Many times there are cysts that are occurring inside the ovaries because of these pills. So they pose a significant risk. If you're popping a pill, it has a very high content of a hormone. You can take regularly a pill which has a lower content of a hormone for those days, which will have lesser side effects on your body and will prevent the various things that I just mentioned. So, because the emergency pill has nearly 100 times the amount of the hormone that I'm talking about than a regular pill will. So, why would you take that on a regular basis?
Okay. Let's get into some myth busting. I want you to tell you, I'm going to give you a series of different, statements and tell me if they're true or false. And then you can elaborate on that as well, because I have just read these and I'm going to cross check them with you.
Sure.
Getting UTI from toilet seats.
No, not
It's not possible?
it's myth.
Okay.
You're having a contact with the surface. Okay.
Okay.
I think you can get a skin infection, a fungal infection, probably herpes if you feel like that area is not used. But a UTI is something that you get if you've held in your pee for very long. You're not drinking enough water. Or
Okay.
you've had recent sexual intercourse. All these are the more common causes of UTI than sitting or using a public restroom. It's a very common misthinking that patients have, that they get UTIs from using dirty toilets.
Okay. Second, you cannot get pregnant while you're on your period.
Not true. You can, if there is an ovulation taking place. We have two ovaries.
Okay.
So there can be an ovulation taking place. It's very rare. It's because the hormones are not sufficient, but there have been cases occurring that way, where patients do get pregnant if they've had unprotected sex during their period.
Okay. Number 3, the withdrawal method is safe and cannot lead to a pregnancy.
No. That is 100% false, because there's something known as pre-cum. Okay, the men secrete something before they ejaculate, and that can also have some quantities of sperm. Only one sperm is required to fertilize the egg, and in a single ejaculate, there are millions of those things, like millions of sperms coming out. So the pre-cum also has sperms. So I think withdrawal method is not 100% proof.
Okay. Number 4, the emergency. I think we've already checked out that the emergency contraceptive pill and is safe and can be used often.
Not
Which
It's used in emergency only. And then probably after you've taken it, you should go to your doctor and tell her that, doctor, I need a more regular contraceptive rather than the emergency contraceptive.
Okay. Number 5, the vagina becomes loose as you age. How true is that?
No, I think vagina becomes patulous after you had a vaginal delivery, but it doesn't become loose. Your entire body seems to lose its collagen after you age. So it's not just the vagina, it's your skin, on your hand. It's everything. Your muscles tend to become loose. So if
Okay.
you're working out, doing your core fitness properly, core exercises are very important for your pelvic floor tightness. And so if you're doing that well, I don't think that it becomes loose.
So the women were opting to, get Botox done down there and get, all kinds of things done. I have heard about all of these, and they're actually very true because they're very popular in the West.
Yeah.
And women seem to be not, leaving any stone unturned when it comes to the whitening and the lightening and the, the labia should be in a certain in a certain way. How
Options that are there nowadays, there's for cosmetic gynecology now.
cosmetic gynecology,
So
yes.
I'm not saying that it doesn't work, of course, but I
Mm.
feel it's a better way to keep yourself fit. You can actually do core exercises and activate those muscles down there, which are like
Okay.
stomach for your pelvic organs.
Okay.
You will not feel that there's the need for all of it.
Let's talk about women's mental health, because I think that's of grave importance, and it changes in different spheres and at different ages of a woman's life. Like in adolescence, it's different. During the childbirth and family raising age, it's different. And then when you reach, perimenopause and menopause, it's different. So give me how the way a woman's mental health changes over the years of her life.
So in adolescence, of course, there's a change in your body. The change
Okay.
in you're getting dressed, you're having hair everywhere. You get, this facial hair, everything. Your body is going through a lot of changes. Some patients have a lot of acne,
Okay.
adolescent girls have hair growth. So that can cause a lot of body dysmorphia. So they feel, that, oh, this is not good. I'm not looking good. Apart from that, periods, the coming of their periods also makes a significant change in their bodies and can cause draining. If you drain certain times of the month, plus you have that along with studies. So there's a lot of depression, anxiety, and body dysmorphia that I see in adolescent girls. I think having a heart-to-heart with their sisters or women or even their friends, their mothers, can really help. And if they feel that it is very severe, they can, of course, visit a gynaec or a dermatologist if, they are actually feeling that their skin is having those lot of breakouts or their periods are irregular. That is adolescence. In the reproductive age group, of course, there's a pressure of getting married, especially in our country, getting married, having children, not getting children. And then after having children, then when is the next child coming? And
Yeah.
after that has happened, then, who's going to take care of the children? So there's a lot of stress that a woman goes through even during that phase. And especially if you're not getting pregnant, that is, if you have subfertility, infertility. And I see most infertility patients, they experience a lot of depression. They somehow take it upon themselves that I'm not able to bear a child, and so that requires a little bit of a help and guidance from us doctors, as well as the members and the husband, the partner. After the woman becomes a mother, the baby is many women find that the child rearing, the bearing of the child she did, but also taking care of the child, the responsibility falls permanently and all of it falls on her. There's no time for her to sleep. She's breastfeeding the children. There's no help at home. So those women face a lot of postpartum depression. And that is something that is missed by most family members and by most doctors also. They feel irritable, they feel low, they have suicidal thoughts, they feel like harming themselves, they feel like harming the babies. So that's a more severe form of postpartum depression, and that needs medical help. They need treatment, they need medication. Otherwise, baby blues, mild amount of depression, feeling the loss of their, like their freedom before, that's fine. It is a transitional phase. But yes, that also requires a lot of understanding by the partner and by the doctor. And for menopause, of course, I think so many changes, loss of your periods, you feel that you're not attractive or you're losing your femininity. Some women take it as, wow, okay, no period blood loss monthly, I'm very happy, I don't want it. But some women feel that they are less sexual, less attractive. They feel that there's a significant change. And of course, they feel, okay, now they are aging closer to the last phase of their life. Their children are leaving home. And, their support system, friends are moving away. So that phase also requires a little bit of care. And nowadays, I'm very happy that many women are seeking help, guidance from counselors for geriatric healthcare, geriatric mental health. And so all the phases of life for women, I'm not saying men will not also experience, but women more, because we are having our menstrual cycle and there's a lot of fluctuation of our hormones taking place throughout our life. So I think that's why more care is to be taken by us.
When you're reaching, during menopause, there's a lot of talk that your desire, or basically the fact that you want to have sex, it decreases as you age. I don't know how much of that statement is true, to be honest with you. And you spoke about HRT, hormone replacement therapy, earlier. Do these seem to help with, because this is a concern that a lot of women have, that, and a lot of husbands complain, or a lot of partners also complain that, my wife is not in the mood for it, or, so what are the possible causes?
So of course, first is the hormonal changes, the loss of estrogen. Second is sometimes sex can become painful after menopause because of the dryness of the vagina. It's called vaginal atrophy. What we say, vagina becomes thin, papery thin, dry. And so the sexual act can become a little bit painful. So you can prescribe lubricants for the patient in such cases. And yes, HRT does help in that. But most probably it has to do with the mental health also. The patient to feel, oh, now why are we needing to connect? Like, why do we need to, I'm old. So there's a lot of mental blockage for sex at that age also. Of course, the male partner can help that way. But otherwise, the hormone replacement, vaginal lubricants, they can help, painful aspect of it.
Okay. Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Chopra, for speaking with me. I've had such a lovely time, and you have enlightened me in so many aspects, not just me, but I think women who are older than me, women who are younger than me. There are so many takeaways from this conversation with you. So thank you so much for coming on the Lifesaver Show. It means a lot.
Thank you so much for having me here. It means a lot. And I hope this helps women out there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for being part of this most amazing conversation with Dr. Devika Chopra. If you have women in the family, make sure you tune in and listen to this entire episode. Also, be a part of my YouTube channel and subscribe to it, share it for all the health info and the updates that you might like.